All right. So, based on the stuff that came out of Symposium, so we have this, okay, what's a DAM? We're going to hit this. And we always have this in the EPAM thing here. That's me. All right. No text on this thing, so why? Shut up. Why am I presenting this? Why? And again, I swear it's going to be short. But why am I presenting this? And the reason for this is it's multifold. But the reaction that I got from several people after Symposium, because the big unveiling at Symposium, which we hit here, there's always one was, we are acquiring Stylelabs. Okay, well that's really cool. Everybody's like, oh, it's awesome. It's a DAM. We're going to have all this stuff. And the reaction when I explained to people what was the big unveiling, I got a whole lot of people that went, what the hell is a DAM? I was like, oh, you don't know. So they weren't jazzed. The other thing I thought was kind of interesting, even at Symposium, was the fact that it depended on who you are, whether or not you were excited about this. Developers were more excited about this. Clients, depended on the client. I had a lot of people from one of my clients there. The main technical guy was pretty jazzed by it. It was too late in their process. It's like, wow, I wish that had happened before. The other people were like, it didn't mean anything to them. So you got a realization that even some people that know what a DAM is don't really know what that means. Don't know what it is, and not really how it relates to Sitecore in general, or how it would relate to you if you don't use one and this is an offering. So that's really the why, and again, it'll be short. All right, so what is a DAM? Didn't know, it stands for Digital Asset Management. System is usually implied there. It's a DAM system. You get that kind of stuff like that. So what do you have in your DAM? So you have your images, your videos, your documents, all that kind of stuff. It's literally digital assets. So the main concept here is that companies can use it across all their disciplines. I mean, if you're working in Sitecore, you're thinking about website. We were talking about JSS. We're talking about, oh, well, with JSS and JavaScript services and all this and React, well, here's my website, but I totally can use my Sitecore data out here. But traditionally, you're just talking about here, just my website. That's not what your DAM does. It's your system of truth. It is, it's where you keep official versions of things. It's where you create your assets themselves. Collaboration, which, and Dean mentioned earlier, we're talking about with Sitecore, and I'll hit this a little bit later. Sitecore's content lifecycle is the content is ready to go in Sitecore. You put it in Sitecore. It's not the content, whether it's an image, whether it's a video, or what have you, like a brochure that you're putting together, anything. Even if you're attaching that to Sitecore, that happens when that whole life cycle is finished, not when it's going to, not when you start the process. And optimization, so you're going to optimize your files or whatever. Those are the kind of things that that when you talk about DAM, that's what you mean. So common features. So I had a quote up here. This is what I explained to somebody. As your CMS is for content, your DAM is for your assets. So Sitecore first and foremost is a CMS. It's a web CMS. It's where you manage all that content you're pushing out to people or so. Well, your DAM's going to do it for your digital assets, and we kind of covered digital assets can be pretty much anything. But the things that you expect out of it, like Sitecore, you expect, or any CMS, if you're talking about any CMS platform, one of Sitecore's competitors, you're going to expect that you can author content, that you can approve content, that you can, preview at this point is definitely, at one point that wasn't common, but it certainly should be. You could publish it. You could version content. All of those things you expect out of a CMS. And a DAM, it's going to have the same thing. Whether it doesn't really matter which one you pick, you're going to be able to do versioning, like you can in any of your CMSs. Workflow, which I'll talk about a little more, editing, creating content, indexing. This is important especially for integration. We'll talk later, read, search, and indexing. You're a big company with a lot of digital assets. You have to be able to actually get in there and search the things. So that's a standard feature that you're going to have in these.
And let me give you a concrete example. So one of the questions that people always ask when they implement Sitecore is, how come I have this cruddy little one-line comments thing when I'm going through the workflow approval process? Like, I've got this huge article, and I literally have a one-liner where I get to say what I don't like about it. Like, that's ridiculous. And that's because Sitecore traditionally has not had does not really extend into the content creation part of the process. Like the typical response that you would give as a good Sitecore consultant is, oh, well, of course you would be doing this in like Word with track changes, and you would go through that whole editing process in Word or some other tool, and only when you're ready to bring it to your web content management system would you enter it into Sitecore. So really that one-liner is either looks great or please send it back to the editorial department to rework. What this system does is responsible for the content creation piece. So like they showed up on Symposium, like here's your image, and I'm going to turn it into, and in the background it turns it into a PDF, so I can highlight this section of the image and say, this guy should not be standing here because he's blocking our logo, and it governs and manages all those versions and workflow for that asset creation process. So it basically extends this whole concept of it adds that whole authoring or visual design process, and then makes it seamless into Sitecore.
One of the things, and I'll talk later about Stylelabs, is that I felt was one of the strong things that they offer compared to the other DAM systems I've seen, which is pretty exciting to me. The rest of the things you get, like metrics, you expect everything as analytics now, and you expect that, and if it's not going to provide you, metrics, metadata, usage, all that kind of stuff like that, then you're not buying a very good DAM in the first place. You're going to expect that in the features. And caching, or the ability to integrate with caching. Some have their own caching mechanisms, because, not only is this, but it's also the delivery of your images. There's a lot of other things, you can do video and all that, but like a lot of this traditionally you're talking about images. And since really I'm talking in concept of working with Sitecore, you're talking about images, and caching is either something that is built into it or it's already set up for it. So you're not expecting, because of the platform, to write a whole bunch of stuff to cache it out to some other system. So those are the things that you expect in a DAM. So when somebody's talking about that, you expect these features. So major players in the market. There are more DAMs than this. These are the logos. I'll talk about this. Notice that Stylelabs is not on here. These are the logos for what I consider the major players in the market as related to Sitecore. These are either ones that I am familiar with because I've seen them. They have connectors that already work for Sitecore, or I'm familiar with integrations where they may not have the best connector, but they're commonly used for it. And these are big players here. OpenText is SAP. Widen is. I currently work on one that's Widen and DigiSuite.
Wait, OpenText is SAP?
Yeah.
When did that happen?
I don't know, but they are. It's an acquisition. They're part of it. But these are big players. These are big players in the Sitecore field.
You missed a Primo and Adam.
I did. I didn't put them on there. But we are using that for one of our I'm not going to mention.
Pretty big.
Yeah, Adam's pretty big. I haven't used it. But do they have a connector? No,
Yes, they do.
We wrote a connector.
Yes.
We wrote the connector. So all of these, I believe, have their own connectors. Yeah, there is an Adam connector, which was written by ECAM. But like these guys intentionally have gone after Sitecore as, as some of these are partner. DigiSuite's a big one. DigiSuite is a big partner. Sitecore everywhere on it. These guys are already, in that market to work with Sitecore as a CMS.
Does Adobe have an offering?
Adobe has an offering in it. It's a big one, but again, not like I said.
It comes with experience management.
Comes with the experience.
Yeah, it's fully integrated.
And there, I bet, is the reason why Stylelabs got bought.
Well,
Is there auto renditioning? They indicate there's auto renditioning.
for Stylelabs,
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to that yet.
So it's basically you create an image, and then AEM's solution is called AEM Assets. It auto renditions, so if it's going to render on desktop or mobile, it auto renditions the image.
So I know that they have, a lot of these guys, I know that they have the capability to do all of that. Whether it does it auto, I don't know. I'm not familiar enough with the product. And I'll talk a little bit about what I know about it when I get to the slide on it, or some of that falls into the non-disclosure thing.
But I think Tiffany raises a good point. Like a big driver behind this acquisition, like Sitecore's been looking for a DAM partner or a DAM acquisition for a long time, and part of that is to respond to Adobe, which, because of their strength in like the Adobe Creative Suite and all of the Adobe tools for asset creators, is usually perceived as the leader in this space.
Yeah, but like, Adobe's had this for years, so why now?
Well, and I think,
So,
Adobe, when I worked on it 6 years ago, they had an amazing game.
so I sat next to, and he'll probably hate me for this, but I sat next to Mark Townsend, who's like the commerce guy at Sitecore, right? And I was actually next to him when this announcement happened at Symposium. And if you know Mark, he'll give you the inside scoop on anything. And he's like, about time. We started looking for this 5 years ago. So partly it's taken this long for Sitecore to identify the right partner in doing this acquisition. So I think actually Sitecore has been looking for a while for who that was going to be. And I know that, I'm sure they were talking to DigiSuite because of the long-standing integration. I'm sure they were talking to Adam or Wyden or some of these other guys. And I think they, for the reasons I was stating in my slide earlier, I think they settled on Stylelabs because they were small, so fairly easy to absorb and integrate, but also because of that innovation and the fact that they were fully like software as a service, cloud hosted.
yeah,
So-
I mean, you have to take a look at, especially if you step back to Sitecore 8 when they announced the experience piece, is that if you look at the roadmap, then Sitecore was going to do everything for you. I think that, and some of that they've decided that they're going to keep in-house, and some of it they decided is better with integrations. Like, they're not going to be your CRM. But if you went back to the Sitecore 8 unveiling and you went to the end of the keynote, like, by Sitecore 9, you don't need Salesforce anymore. Well, no, that's not really what they're going to do. So now they integrate with Salesforce, and that's instead there's a tighter integration. But when it comes to something like this, they want that to be something that if you want, you can get it all within Sitecore. So I'm going to run through this real quick, which is the media library. Anybody that uses Sitecore is familiar with the media library, but actually this kind of lends itself to what they've always tried to do with this. So the media library, which, if you're not familiar with it, is where Sitecore keeps all of its, digital assets. And originally it was a module that you installed, and this is an important, a growth thing. So there's a module that you installed, and what you got out of the module was that you got these new Sitecore items. So what you got out of that was the fact that you got a Sitecore item, it had a Sitecore GUID, you could link to the things. Prior to this, you couldn't link to them. It just expected that you had an image somewhere and you literally had the URL to it, and someone in the HTML spit out and knew where to go get it, whether it was on your file system itself or whether you had it hosted somewhere, it doesn't really matter. They gave you this module you could install, and it gave you these media items. And it stored the assets on the file system. That was the best thing for it to do. So you got an item, and the item was aware in a field that this is where this thing lives. So it lived on your server. Now, the benefits of it living on your server was the fact that it was fast. You could cache, if something's just sitting on your file system, you don't have to go ask for it, you're not going and grabbing it from somewhere else, it was just there. You're able to cache it, you're able to throw it out. Worked pretty well, but you ran into a couple things. One, you ran into a file size problem. If you had this amount of space on your server, as your site matured and growed and you put more and more images on there, well, how big is the hard drive? And then when you fill up your hard drive, what are the ramifications of that? So that's a problem. The other problem we ran into is that when you went to multiple content delivery servers, if the images are on the CD, you got to make sure they're on both CDs. So you're running a problem there. So the next thing they did was they went optionally to store in the database, which is what we have today. We're storing in the database. Well, guess what? And I have here in the bottom here, so I'll tell anybody, this little quote says Sitecore is a terrible file server. Sitecore is a terrible file server. You do not want to, we learned this the first time we tried to put videos on a Sitecore site.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't remember how many we got to, 8 or something like that, and the whole site came down. The whole thing just died, because it's not a file server. It's not made for that. We're like, oh, okay, well, we have the media library. We can store media things in it. We've made videos, let's store them in there. It doesn't work.
Everybody remember the days where every single file served up by Sitecore had an ASHX?
So all those were,
That was fun.
Yep.
And that was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
No, it was more than
Three years ago.
Yeah.
4.
It is fun.
4 years ago.
Yeah.
And the other thing that you got with it is you got, look, so the current version allows for editing and stuff a little bit. So Sitecore has, over time, realized that you needed some of those things that we're talking about from a DAM. You were able to, so even the first version, you were able to upload an asset, and it did something with it. So you were able to upload it there. It gave you that capability, it gave you the capability to link to it. More modern ones, you couldn't edit it. I mean, if you've used it, you can go and you can crop images, you can have different sized images. They gave you a little bit of that capability that you would get from a DAM, but that's kind of it. And SQL Server is terrible at serving up, well, giant files that you've stuck into it. So, I mean, you've got to involve a specific amount of caching and stuff like that. And again, we'll go back to Sitecore is a terrible file server. Just as Media Library works great for a lot of websites. If you are running small sites, if you're putting logos in there, if it doesn't need that life cycle outside of that, Media Library is completely wonderful for all those things. But as Sitecore is being used for larger and more enterprise solutions, it's not really that adequate. It's just not. And, you know, done this for a long time. So you get to this, you get to DAM integrations. And I stole this one from, I don't remember who's, this is one of the, and this is what I was talking about, one of the major players on the other one. This is one of their brochure screenshots that I stole to show what you get out of connecting with one of these where they already have the connector built. This is what you expect out of the connector. So, like I said, connectors are built for some of the players. And it can replace your media library, and this is what we're showing here. So in this case, they have the media library. Well, it's not Sitecore's media library, that's the DAM. You're able to, and this is the thing, if you're bold, it could be a two-way street. Depends on how you write it, depends on how you configure it. But not only can you consume that data, but you can use Sitecore to write that data back, whether it's metadata, whether or not, in some cases, say, oh, this image is not really how I want it cropped or whatever. You could do that and return it back to the DAM, which means that it's still in the DAM, not in Sitecore as your source of truth. We talked about that earlier. DAM should be your source of truth for that, which means that if you've added metadata to something, which would be very important across multiple platforms, that's gone two ways. Now, that's a business process thing, whether or not you want somebody who's in Sitecore updating that kind of information, but it's something that you can do, you know, integrating a DAM like that.
And by the way, that's actually extremely common nowadays. So if you are working at an enterprise that's used to having a DAM solution, one of the things that they will do is they'll upload the high-res print version of everything. But what do you, like, there's no alt text in print versions. So like a lot of times there are graphic designers who are making brochures or other print things. They won't even think about the kind of metadata and descriptions that you would need for accessibility, like web accessibility purposes or the blind, right? Nobody hands a blind guy a brochure that's not going to do anything, right? So, so it's actually really common that you would need not only in your digital asset management system to manage the media, but also all of the metadata around the various different uses that that media can serve. Whether it's going to be a kiosk or a mobile app or a website or a print thing, they all have different sort of metadata attached to it. And I think that that's one of the things Brent's probably going to get to, and I'm probably stealing his thunder. That sort of process is actually what Stylelabs was really good at in managing all that metadata around those assets.
Yeah, and that was Dean actually hit the Stylelabs in the last thing, and this is why we come back to this. This is the reason to talk about DAMs. So there's the picture of that's their actual building in Belgium. The neat thing for us here at EPAM is the fact that they have several offices worldwide, 2 here in the U.S. One of them is right near your EPAM's office, which one day maybe we'll get to go there. But this is the one thing, so they're from Belgium. That's Tim and Tom. They kept saying Tim and Tom. That's Tim and Tom. And I'll come back to Tim and Tom in just a sec. But you have the strong workflow capabilities you talk about, and I'm going to circle back to this, but I want to kind of go through the bullets and then come back to the highlights. Web to print. Web to print's still a real thing. They have an entire piece to it that I got to look at that was really neat. Digital rights. So, I mean, I know people here in the room, I can point, have had to go buy images. I want to go buy this image here. I got to get the approval, buy it. That I want to use on the website or so. One of the things I thought was interesting here is that they have, you know, they have that entire bit kind of brought off so that you can do rights to sell imagery. That's the kind of thing, their customers and their clients do that. So it's more than just the stuff we were talking about earlier that you use it. They have a marketing portal, whole thing like that. But the PIM features and structures, so I'm going to come back here. That's not normal in what you see in DAM offerings. That is one of the things I think is most interesting about this. And the Sitecore integration, so we'll talk about that. That's coming in 2019 sometime. We don't know when. We don't know what, but it will be integrated into Sitecore so that it's not something that you know, a Sitecore client, Sitecore developer is going to need to write a connector or something. That's part of it. It's an acquisition. They're going to work together. Like Dean said, there's expertise there that Sitecore is going to benefit from. There will be a fully, like, tightly coupled integration here, and it's pretty exciting from my point of view. But I want to go back to a couple things. Tim and Tom, I got the privilege to sit down with the two of them. We had a couple of round tables after Symposium, and I got to sit down with them and get a personal demo, and I can't really talk about it, or I get one of my MVP strikes. So I did get to ask them questions that were outside of the demo, and they had answers for everything. I was very, very impressed with them and their product. I got to ask them about the PIM, because they teased on it. So, you know, your DAM is a different system than your PIM system. And like Dean said, we integrate with PIMs. You do. Sitecore has the capability of Sitecore Commerce. We implemented a Sitecore Commerce site last year, used no PIM, using Sitecore Commerce directly in Sitecore or your products. Totally can do it, but they had like 14, 20 SKUs. I mean, they can add it and stuff like that. They have a PIM offering, and there are standards that you do for products. And he showed them to me, and I asked questions, and I'm going to go and what worked and what didn't and what not. But let me tell you what, just about everything that I threw at him, they already had flushed out. I was very impressed with the product. Very impressed.
They implement two different
Yes.
product information management schemas.
Yes.
Out of the box.
Which are the two important ones.
Right. So,
Google's.
like, again, for exchange of product information, which happens on a lot of like B2B marketplaces, there's actually industry classification standards for how you sell products for retailers and that sort of thing. They've got that metadata built in. So if you say, I use this standard to communicate with my suppliers, bam, you see your items with the 30 pieces of metadata fields already built for you. You just have to fill them in.
Yeah, and if you support Google's, and this is important going through, if you support Google's, which is one of the ones I support, you know, you search on Google, things come back as product items. That's because those are product objects that Google recognizes as products. It's not that Google has decided that they're going to scrape some HTML page and like make it kind of work. No, that's an object that they're expecting. They're expecting that thing to be structured in that way so they recognize that as a product, and they support this. I was very impressed with it. The workflow is, and I'll talk about this in like my final kind of thought on this, but the workflow was insanely impressive. If you have ever worked in a company or worked with a client that has a very complicated life cycle before, which most of us here have, either internally or through a client. I mean, I've had conversations where they expect when they buy Sitecore that this entire process that they've gone through is now going to be done in Sitecore. That's not what Sitecore does. Sitecore has never done that. We talked about that earlier. Sitecore is, I'm putting the content in because it's ready to go in. There may be tweaks when you actually see it on the website. There may be edits on review for certification. But that's not the part where it started its life cycle. And this system, more than just what I would consider standard digital asset, they had a lot of that thought out. So, you know, it's one thing to talk. Dean gave the example of an image.
I'll give you another concrete example. They do ad hoc workflow, which is
Yes, they
not
do.
something that Sitecore's ever done.
Yes.
So it's just like, hey, Joe, could you look at line 4? And you can send it to Joe and track whether Joe gave you a response.
And
which is the kind of thing that we've never been able to do in Sitecore,
Well, and-
right?
and
We have to
multiple-
predefine our steps.
yeah, and multiple sign-offs per step, which is something that Sitecore definitely cannot do. It cannot be that like these 6 people have to sign off at this step. Otherwise, if you try to do something, it would be linear. It would be like, okay, this person has to sign off, and then this person has to sign off, and this person, instead of it being a collaborated effort at that particular stage. All of that kind of stuff can be handled in this. Like I said, I was very, very impressed with them and with the product. Now, this is the conclusion. I'll have something to say. So, I you know, after this was done, this is Forrester's thing. Sitecore purchased Stylelabs, fits a trend, but is not a game changer. So that's the conclusion, and this is my conclusion, so that's wrong. They're absolutely wrong. This is a game changer. So not only, I mean, we talked about PIM, not only is, eventually this is going to be, well, they haven't said this, Dean and I are hopeful, because we've had this conversation, that this really is something that integrates with the commerce, because the commerce capabilities, the potential is fantastic. But like I said, because this is part of Sitecore, you can do that full life cycle. We talked about, you could do that now instead of building custom systems that do that, or buying another system that does that, or using, we had a client that their new procedure was that they would publish something and then they would create a PDF of the page, doing like save as PDF, and then route that through, because they had to keep to those old standards, that old outside system. With this, that client could just do all of it with Sitecore because it's integrated in Stylelabs. So I do think it's a game changer. It is not just like a nice, oh, now we've got our, this take on this was, okay, check, now we have a dam. It's something that the product is needed for a long time. I'm still going to stand and say that Sitecore is the best CMS that you can get out there, and it did not have this capability that, like Kyle was saying, Adobe had 6 years ago. And they've been trying to get it. They wanted it in-house. I think that's why you're going to see that it wasn't just going to ever be a partnership. I don't think that would have been the solution that would have fit the platform. So they have this, and so I do think it's a game changer, and I think it's exciting, and I think it's going to change the way that a lot of implementations of Sitecore are going to be from now on. And that's it.
Did they talk about licensing?
No, they have not gotten. So Sitecore is the announcement of the acquisition was done. It's going to be next year before they, I mean, we already know that like I said, there are several things that I'm a little bit aware of that I can't say, that because Sitecore needs to figure these things out and push it out to the public.
Actually, I think we can turn to this end of the table and be like, have you heard anything about?
I am learning more in this meeting than I've learned in since symposium about this.
So Sitecore sales doesn't know what it costs.
Yeah, they're figuring it out.
I've been wondering, I haven't even seen a demo of it yet. So you guys are more in the know than I am at this point.
It is, some of the stuff that they were showing is really cool. We do know that the first step is going to be more of an integration with Stylelabs, so they're going to be an own independent stack, and Sitecore is going to interact with it somehow. Web services to push data back and forth. And then the longer term play is a more thorough integration where you start seeing like some of Stylelabs technology migrate into the Sitecore core platform, or some of the Sitecore structures and things integrate. That's probably going to be, they were saying maybe end of 2019, it's going to be 2020 before we see that. But I think the early integration is probably going to happen fairly soon.
I would expect.
I have heard that the first iteration of the connector is going to be available this month.
Okay. Wow, that's faster than expected. I thought it was going to be Q1.
It's going to be fairly basic.
Yeah.
There was a demo. There was a demo on one of the keynote.
Yeah.
There was a demo
Yeah,
on Stylelabs.
they had the demos, but I didn't think it was going to be until January is what the last time I heard that. I mean, if they launch it now, I want to play with it.
Again, go on YouTube, look for, because I think people have taken recordings of it. They might not be great, but watch the demo of him like going through like the creative workflow process. And it's like, oh my gosh, this is this thing that customers have always asked for in Sitecore. Now there's a way to address the more creative side prior to the content management and publishing that Sitecore does.
Yeah, he was able, the thing that impressed me in the one-on-one I had with him, because Dean talked about ad hoc, is that when I asked him to do some things, I mean, you have a spiel. You've got the thing that you run through, you've got a demo, you're walking through it and like, okay, I have this product and I'm going to add this thing. But I threw some stuff at him that was way off the demo, and he would think about it for me. It's like, oh, let me do this, and he would modify the thing real quick. He'd be like, okay, yeah, we could do this, and he would do this, and he would set it, and he would have to reset the whole thing and go, and see, now it does that, because what they built is very flexible. Like I said, these guys are not. There was an interesting thing is that I mentioned the big players that I had that were Sitecore. Those are the guys that built their own connectors.
So they have a connector for the Adobe as well, right? For Stylelabs.
Stylelabs?
Because that's the demo they showed us.
Yeah,
Is it the Adobe
because-
one?
they do.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do have a connector
Connector
for
for-
Adobe, and it can, again, they're, as a digital asset management system, they have to integrate with creative tools.
Oh, yeah, they're
Do
gonna,
they
they're gonna,
have, I mean, like Adobe, you can create that document, I mean, sort of files, right, the photos and whatnot.
Yeah.
Do they have something like that as well? In the Style Lab, do they have some kind of a tool they can create the images, like an Adobe?
I think all of it starts from like uploading the photo or the original base asset, but if you're talking about it like applying filters to it, cropping, resizing, all that stuff.
No, I'm not talking about the basic thing, like,
Yeah.
you know, in the Adobe you can have layers and, you know, whatnot, like so many things you can have as an Adobe, right, to create an image.
Yeah,
Right?
I mean, Photoshop is an incredibly powerful and refined tool.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
Well,
I,
AEM Assets integrates with Creative Cloud,
yeah.
Adobe Creative
Yeah.
Cloud. So most asset development is done over in Creative Cloud, but it's integrated with DAM.
so is it the site lab or, you know, is it going to be replacement for those? Or is it just the management of,
No, it's not a replacement for Creative Cloud. It's more done for, again, for I think the review, editing,
it's for the
resizing.
management? Okay,
Yeah.
Asset
okay,
management.
asset management or the, or yeah.
Gotta give them something to acquire next year.
Yeah. But anyway, I highly recommend looking at the video and seeing like the sort of scenarios that are being illustrated in it. It's really cool, and it's actually, what they showed on Symposium was a fraction of what Brent was telling me about later when he got his like private preview.
which he's under NDA, so I can tell him.
Yeah. So I think actually, I mean, to be fair to this Forrester dude, short term he's right. Right. The short term they're going to do a plugin. Okay, great. Finally, Sitecore has a first party solution for it. But I think Brent's right that the long term there's actually a lot of potential here that I think this guy's missing.
Well, and to be fair to him, I saw this and I was kind of put off by the title. I was like, really? You know, have you never used the thing? You know, and I read it, and if you read that actually, if you look it up in the articles to pull up, he hits on a lot of what are the important high parts in there. What I felt that the title was misleading and maybe wants you to maybe it's supposed to pull you in to read it, but I didn't think it was a good title, and I don't think he should have used it, because even what he's noting in there, I think makes it a game changer. He was putting on the fact that okay, well, you know, one of the things he said is it's like, you know, oh, finally,
Yeah,
you know,
late to market.
Yeah.
late to market on it, and you know,
And I'll say this, I think, you know, to defend him, I'll be that guy, I'll defend this guy. I think he's probably talking about in the world, like in the marketplace in general, right? That I think what this does is this brings Sitecore to parity in some ways, and will probably give it like certain advantages in certain use cases. But it's not like all of a sudden, you know, this isn't chocolate meets peanut butter. You know, it's not like
it's not, but it's not. But like, if you look at it from, probably not giving the platform something, but you look at it from, and you know, maybe my perspective is different because I spend a bunch of my time going to clients and trying to figure out if Sitecore is the right fit for them or if it's the next thing or so. Is this makes the answer yes for some people that it would have been like, okay, yeah, it's the right answer, but how are you handling this part of your business? Like I said, the one client that was the one technical guy from the client was jazzed by this, and basically his response was like, well, crap, it's too late for us to do this, but it would have been great for them, because what they're actually using is one of the other ones that I showed the logo for that I'm not going to mention because this is being videotaped, and that's nowhere near as good a product from all my experience with it, but it's the one they chose. And so now we're stuck dealing with that one, and yes, there is a connector, but it's not great, and it doesn't work as great as, it doesn't have the features that this one does. So I do think that it is a game changer.
yeah, it's
From that
definitely a game
perspective.
changer for the platform.
Yeah.
You know, I think for the CMS marketplace itself, not as much. You know,
No,
it's not like
it does position them in a better place,
absolutely
missing, you know,
absolutely.
because I mean, like DigiSuite's a great product. Note I just noted that DigiSuite was not the one. DigiSuite's a great product, great, fantastic product. But you got to buy them separately and then use the connector and integrate with them. And Yeah, and frankly, it's bold. I mean, I know they've been a really good partner with Sitecore for Sitecore. I happen to be sitting at a dinner table the day after the announcement with one of the DigiSuite guys. He was not bluffed, which I expect him not to be. But the nice thing also, and I should add this, is that just because they've done this doesn't preclude anybody from using one of the other dams. It doesn't mean that, okay, now, Sitecore's bought this and 2 years from now, you're gonna use this and you can't use anything else. That's not the way Sitecore works. It just means that it's available to you.
This is an interesting point. I think in a similar way to commerce, I would expect Sitecore to actually have a layer in there where you could, in addition to, like, you could have Stylelabs, but you could also swap it out for a dam that you have.
I'd be shocked if that's not the case down the road. 'Cause
Yeah,
that's
I
what they
mean,
do every day.
and that's exactly what they do with everything else, right? Like analytics, there's Sitecore Analytics, or you can connect to something else, right? There's personalization, right? That you can use Sitecore personalization, or if you end up using other stuff, that's okay too, right? It's not like you've got to use this and it excludes any other tool. It's that you can use this, or you could use this other thing. But now, if you don't have anything, we've got something that can help you with that too. And I think that from that perspective, it absolutely is a great step.
Is it the Stylelabs it's acquired by either Sitecore or is it partnered with?
No, it's an acquisition.
So that means there is no Stylelabs anymore. It's a Sitecore.
Well,
version
no,
of-
if you go to their site now, the logo says Stylelabs, a Sitecore
Company.
company.
They're calling it Content Hub now.
Yes.
Hmm.
So it is.
So-
I mean, that's an interesting thing, and that was brought up somewhere. Maybe it was one of those conversations. I can't remember when this conversation with them or so, but it was brought up. I mean, I remember just brought up like, okay, so they work with Adobe. Doesn't mean that that's going away. This is an existing business. It's not like Sitecore's coming in and go, okay, we bought them. If you're not Sitecore, bye. They're not doing that. That doesn't make any business sense. So the Stylelabs will still be used to integrate with competitors' platforms, at least for now.
So I think we should stop you there, Brent, because I know